Good morning. In last week's nudgecast, we spoke about family and finances as a result of people spending more time at home with the family. We discussed that once you've done the DIY and you've completed Netflix, using any spare time to look at your budget could be very fruitful. For example, in normal times, a typical household spends £80 a week on travel. But with travel costs now slashed for the majority of us, redirecting that spend to loan repayments can make a massive financial difference. So, quick example, 3-year loan, if you doubled your loan repayments, which could be funded by those travel savings, that will reduce the interest you pay by over 56%. So it makes sense, but as we all know, it's not that easy, which is really strange when you think about it. If I said I'll give you £10 to spend 30 minutes reading an article, the majority of people would do so. The equivalent time spent looking at your budget can be worth a lot more than £10, but people tend not to bother. And this is because a barrier to budgeting isn't just time, it's down to the psychology of budgeting. People know it's important, and we see this day in, day out from our nudge community through our nudgeonomics, which is the confidential management information that we see of what people are using nudge to learn about. So from that nudgeonomics across all clients, what we're now seeing is budgeting is the fourth most popular area of learning across the whole scope of money. So that's greater than pensions, insurances, debt, and even children and family. So people are interested in budgeting, but left to their own devices, they just don't do it. And that's because of psychology. So our emotional brain responds to the word budget the same way it responds to the word diet. A budget implies scarcity, and it's our instinct to overcome that scarcity. But understanding how the human brain works, you can overcome this. You can work with your psychology and not against it. For example, timing is really important. Trying to budget just after payday when you've got money in your bank account won't work because you don't feel the need. Budgeting at the end of the month for the following month, on the other hand, will be much more effective. And a good example of the power of working with psychology rather than against it is our budget planner on Nudge, which recognizes another issue with budgeting, and that's that it's hard work. It requires a lot of heavy lifting and administration, which is too easily put off. Basically, you need an incentive, and we know that, and that's a trick that we use. So fundamentally, people are nosy about money, and as part of something called social norming, people love a benchmark, which can be used to get the ball rolling. And in this example, there are a few tricks used to encourage proactive budgeting. Benchmarks are fascinating to see what others are spending. So in this example, people like me spending £120 on council tax, that's the social norming. Secondly, action focused. So my £85 a month on energy might seem good, but compare that to the £60 spent by people like me based on data from the Office of National Statistics. And I've got that nudge to dig deeper into my bill. And I've also then got the education I need to show me how to do it. It's also important to point out the ability to budget annually rather than monthly. I know that has a big difference. Jed, perhaps you could talk about that.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So going back to behavioral psychology, when people set a monthly budget, they're doing so using something called mental accounting, where they're much more likely to think about the here and now rather than the bigger annual picture. And actually, if we budget monthly, we typically underestimate our spending by 15%. Because we're in the here and now, we forget about things like Christmas and birthdays, holidays, and so on. That's why companies set an annual budget to ensure they don't overspend. The big picture rule of thumb for budgeting is the 50-30-20 rule, which are your needs, your wants, and your saves. It provides a really simple framework for people to take action, and in behavioral economics provides incentives to do the right thing in the savings category because your pleasure is sated in the wants category. Jam jar accounts are a great way to adhere to this need, want, and saving philosophy. You simply set up 3 accounts for your income, and where possible, stick to spending in each of the categories of needs, wants, and saving. In behavioral economics, this is using something called the partitioning effect, whereby consumption decreases when we physically partition supplies. So for example, with my kids, if I take a big bag of sweets and put them into smaller amounts, they actually eat less sweets overall. So moving on to a slightly different matter, because of the spread of germs during coronavirus, we're being encouraged to pay by contactless. The contactless limit has actually gone up to £45, and that means that we'll be more likely to spend more money. By paying with cash, we feel more of what's called the pain of paying than if we tap away. This is actually a concern during the crisis, that people will be tapping away and not feeling that pain of paying. And evidence across studies shows that increasing guilt-free impulse spending and unnecessary spending will rise during this period of time. So what are the advantages of having a budget and using these techniques? There are expected outcomes, so things like, for example, you're more likely to have a good credit rating, which means that you're more likely to have an acceptance on a mortgage application, for example. But there are also unexpected benefits, such as the impact on relationships and your happiness. And when we're in control of our money, you're actually much less likely to see relationships break down and to suffer from poor mental health. So my overall summary is that budgeting sounds boring, doesn't it? It's one of those words like pension that just doesn't appeal to our human instincts because of our inbuilt desire to focus on the here and now, what's called the present bias. But if we use the behavioral economics techniques to appeal to our other desires, such as our regret aversion, and we use techniques such as the partitioning effect, we can actually create these improved financial resilience, which leads to that better emotional state and improves our relationships. So it's a great thing.
Brilliant. Yeah, great summary there, Jed, and particularly the sweet example. That's definitely one that I'm going to have to try and work with. I think my summary, with this in lockdown, now's a unique time to address such an important topic. And to link with the nudgecast last week, involving your family in budgeting, I think is a really good opportunity at the moment. And then I think thirdly, I encourage people to think about the positive sides of budgeting. So not about the diet, but more about the feeling of control that it will give you, the opportunity to clear that debt by redirecting travel spend, for example, but also the ability to put some money aside to afford those treats. So yeah, great to speak to you on important topic. Have a good week.
Cheers, Tim. Take care, everyone.